way of understanding like motherhood and fatherhood and making a family, because you're entangling yourself so much. And that's wonderful and amazing, because guess what? Roots entangle into the ground, and that's why you have these gorgeous plants that can bear fruit and vegetables. And but it's also like that entanglement is risky, right? Because it's our hearts and our minds and little beings and their hearts and their minds, and it's like it's scary, because what if, right? What if, what if XYZ PQ32?
There's this whole crisis maybe of people
Yeah,
not
yeah.
realizing their own potential for
Mm,
resilience in all these different aspects. And so when it comes to
yeah,
family
yeah.
and motherhood and parenthood in general, fatherhood, like having
Mm,
babies, if you let it be really, really hard and foreclose all the rest of your possibilities,
mm,
then maybe that's what it's going to be. But maybe we
mhm,
can tap into some of that resilience and say, no, I can keep living my life. I just have to
mhm.
adapt and do it a little
Yeah.
differently.
On this resilience note, that risk and discomfort, even painful processes such as
Mhm,
labor, these have been turned into a choice, and that makes it so
mhm.
that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes it so that when it's like you've gone through
Mhm.
this sort of thing that puts you in the same boat as 99% of all women who have ever existed, right? You're in,
Exactly.
but now they're like, well, that's a choice though, and it's like, well, that's weird. It's weird that like the thing that was
Yeah.
like the defining thing for women for all time, now they're like, well, that's a choice though. And I guess I want to ask you both what you think about test tube
Yeah.
babies and the future of bringing new life into existence.
The concept of making the most of your potential, like if we think about where the word potential comes from in potency, it is about having babies, truly. Like it's about like you're being like a potent person. It's about having children. So it's like it's to me, I think it's kind of like strange that it's completely been hijacked by making the most of your potential is getting a career, or making the
Mm.
most of your potential is getting a master's degree. Nothing wrong with those things. Nothing wrong with those things at all. But it's like we've kind of completely um just relegated that to like some sort of like, oh, it's a nostalgic ideal if you want to even tap into some of the root meaning of what it means to make the most of your potential. It's like, no, that's just a fuller holistic picture, in my opinion, of what it means to make the most of your potential.
Right. Hello, everyone. This is Anne Snellgrove McKerracher.
And this is David
Oh, Michelle.
McKerracher. You're listening to
I'm
What's
like,
Right.
I know
And
there
that's
was a
Michelle.
pause
And
there.
that's Michelle
And
right
that's
there.
Michelle
Yeah.
oh,
Garner of OG Rose, who we're so excited to have here. You all see lots of Daniel Gardner from OG Rose, but there's another side. And
yes,
she's
I'm so
with
happy.
us now.
So happy to be here, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome back. You've been, you're a friend of the channel at this point, but we've not had
Yeah,
you on What's Right since we started it. And so uh, it
yeah.
was already on our to-do list, but after we got to spend a few days with you out there in Virginia, we've been thinking about it a
Yay.
lot. And so it's good to have you.
Oh yeah. I love you guys. I'm so glad to talk with you now and to have had you at our home. And yeah, always I just what you guys are up to is so inspiring and invigorating. And so yeah, I'm always up for talking with y'all about anything. It's very fun and
Thank
very,
you.
yeah, very
Yeah,
engaging, and like always it also pushes me, challenges me too. So I appreciate that.
thank you. Yeah, and I think we felt very energized and inspired just to be so welcomed into your home and to like see this awesome life that you guys are living. That, I mean, Dave and I are like, we hope that's us, that we can have something like that, in 5 to 10 years from now, some kids and an epic library in our living room. There's no TVs in there. It's just library and books and out on the property and these kids with big personalities. And so I think today we want to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
family and
yeah.
children. And yeah, I'll turn it over maybe to you, Dave, if you want to start with a question and where you're at right now with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the sort of a grounding question is the question about the good life. And the
Yeah.
question that comes from that is like, what's right living, but then the connotation or the double entendre, of the name of the show is also like what's right, because for us it's like a lot of things that seem that like it's a good way of living. It's actually considered right coded, and we find that interesting. And so I think that's
Yeah.
one of the sort of springboard questions is like, do you find that your lifestyle is seen by some people as though it's like right coded? And if so, how do you feel about that? And why do you think it is? I know it's a lot of questions, but
No, no, no. Oh, it's great. That's great. Thank you again, Anne and Dave. And those are great questions, Dave. I think, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I felt it more when I first, got married and moved out to the farm. And, I got pregnant, 4 months after getting married. So it was just like all really quick into that new way of living and being. And yeah, I think I felt it more then because I was still very much kind of conversant and I don't know, just in terms of the timeline, I was still very close to the time of, the being around sort of more like cosmopolitan areas and like, I was living in an apartment with, between, so it would fluctuate depending on the time of the year, but with like between 3 or 5 girls, in this apartment. And it was right on the university at UVA. And so, and they were all kind of pursuing, med school or this career or that career or this, working for this nonprofit or that or the other. And yeah, I definitely, felt it more because right when you make that decision or you're making that decision, it's like everybody's gonna kind of see it and comment on it or, maybe react to it. So, I do think that it typically is considered right coded. I don't know that I think about it a lot in that way. Not that I don't think about it at all, but it's just that because people have had their reactions and then it's kind of been like that there's like a peak of that and then it kind of subsides because over time people just sort of like they accept it, like, oh, you're just, and also they just are like, it's your life and I'm going to make other decisions and that's, totally cool. But so you get less comments about it, though there can always still be this subtle kind of, you hear it in people's tone of voices, like the way that, or what they hint at, or kind of some of those things that are like the Freudian slips of what they say about how they still kind of worry. They worry about you, like, oh, are you really happy? Are you really making the most of your talents? Are you really doing what you want to do? Are you doing what you want to do? And those concerns are all coming from a very good place, and good intention. But I do think that it's also very assumptive about what it kind of has a lot of assumptions in there already about what does it mean to make the most of your talents or
Right.
to be happy and things like that. So it's just yeah, I do, it's interesting it's interesting too to think about how the whole concept of like the traditional lifestyle and how much of that is like aesthetic versus just like the core values of what that means. And I'm interested in that too because and how that plays out, especially in like the social media scape, which is becoming more and more of people's kind of it's a bigger part of people's kind of social understanding of the world is through like these, even hashtags or like these sort of, these kind of yeah, I don't know, aesthetic tropes or something like that.
Mhm.
And I, again, I think that I don't know, I always get a little bit like when I don't know, I don't really engage too much in the conversations people have about like, oh, like I hate trad this or I like this or this because I'm just like, well, it's kind of falling into just thinking of it as only an aesthetic versus it being like, yes, there are aesthetic things that come out of people's value sets and what they like believe in, but
Mm.
and what they want to do or what they find valuable. But it's just to me, it's just way too superficial to stay in that realm or to even engage in that way or those types of debates and stuff because it's just like you don't know the person, you really don't know the person or why they're doing it or what their motivations are.
Mm.
So I don't, yeah, but I do think it's interesting that that there are these kind of um, ideas of what there are. I do feel like there's kind of a little bit of resurgence of the sense of simpler times and like let's get back to kind of family and those values which are associated with conservatism and the right. But I also think like it's weird because it's like I don't know. Maybe it's just a human brain with our left and right hemisphere itself. But like, why do we think of that as, as as more right, or like, why do we think, or in terms of like right wing, or as conservative? I mean, maybe it's just because like you're having to do things that are limiting. Like you make these decisions that then sort of like limit uh, what kind of your open sort of like potentiality is, which maybe would be more associated with like a kind of liberal perspective. But yeah, I think that's what I would say is that so I hope that answers your questions. I don't know if I think about the way I live as a right coded or anything like that, but I do understand that it is like I can't deny that people would definitely see it that way. And I don't really have much to say about that. Like it doesn't really bother me, like it doesn't bother me because I don't, if somebody's going to have some sort of like judgmental thing one way or the other, um, it's like cool if you like it and it vibes with you, then if it's something you really kind of think as hey, that's something that I'd want to be doing, then cool, you can do it too in your own way. But if you don't, that's okay as well. But yeah, I do think there is something weird to me about, and Dave and I sort of talked about this like really briefly, but the concept of making the most of your potential, like if we think about where the word potential comes from and potency, it is about having babies, truly. Like it's about like you're being like a potent person. It's about having children. So it's like it's to me, I think it's kind of like strange that it's completely been hijacked by making the most of your potential is getting a career, or making the
Mhm.
most of your potential is getting a master's degree. Nothing wrong with those things. Nothing wrong with those things at all. But it's like we've kind of completely um just relegated that to like some sort of like, oh, it's a nostalgic ideal if you want to even tap into some of the root meaning of what it means to make the most of your potential. It's like, no, that's just a fuller holistic picture, in my opinion, of what it means to make the most of your potential. So that was a little bit all over the place in terms of answering your question, but it's some of the things that have come to mind. And one last thing is that when people do express concerns, um, I really can't like reassure them, honestly. Like I can't reassure people about that sort of thing, but there have been times when it's quite hard because you're like, I want the people who care about me to know I'm okay and like I'm happy. And then you're like, am I delusional? Like, am I just not happy? And I'm pretending I'm happy, or I'm like kind of believing I'm happy, whatever. So I think you go through those existential times, but in that some ways those times are very refining. And I think that it kind of does make you come out through that as like having to just make a choice where it's like, no, even if I am delusional, I am making a choice to still accept that this is what I'm creating as my life. And I'm going to commit to it, like, and I'm going to be in it. And there's going to be happy days and sad days and, hard days and great days. And it's going to be all of it. So it's that fullness of it. And yeah, um, I'm all about like embracing that. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you touched on a lot there. And it is interesting. I think like I almost want to say stigma that seems to exist around being someone like with a college degree or someone kind of in more liberal spaces where women are like rightfully so embarking on their careers and being encouraged to kind of do the individual, I don't need no man, nothing's gonna hold me down mindset, which is like, again, like you do you, but then if you do choose to go the other way and
Yeah.
have kids young, and I think nowadays, like having kids before 28 seem like is, I think, considered
Yeah.
young,
Mhm.
whereas that hasn't always been the case for human history. And yeah, how that like motherhood and starting a family young, getting married young is just seemingly something that's stigmatized and even maybe looked down upon. Like I just so like Dave and I are thinking very seriously about wanting to have kids and start our own family sometime in the next year, 2 years. And so just as I'm kind of seeing all my friends as we're getting ready to move and talking about, the next phase of both of our lives when I'm with a friend, I say, yeah, we want to start a family. We want to be up with Dave's parents while they're aging. And most of the time the reaction is, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. But I just met with a friend, I think it was yesterday. Um, and I love her, I respect her, but I said, yeah, we want to have kids. And the reaction was, oh, really? Like, are you sure? Like, not that she was trying to change my mind, but she's like, there's just something to be said about experiencing your time when you're young and not being tied down. So, like, I understood her concerns, but it was kind of disheartening to be like, this is something that I want so bad and we're so excited about. And then your friend is like clearly judging you and disproving of your decision. It's like, that's an interesting thing to say to someone who's like, wants to literally create life, have a baby, like a precious baby. And just kind of the something that we talked about when we were together is the like not only a lot of people just totally foreclosing the possibility of having kids, whether they're just saying, nope, never want them, don't want my own kids. Lots of young people. I have a friend who's just a few years older than me. She got her tubes completely removed. Zero possibility of having a baby. She's not even 30. She's like, nope, I don't want kids. Foreclosing that possibility. You have these young women saying, nope, no children for me. You do you. That's your choice. But then people who also like openly hate children. They say, "Oh, if I'm visiting my friend, I don't want their kids to be around." I've heard that before too. It's like, well, we
Yeah.
can't. Children exist. They're always going to exist. I think they're precious. You think they're precious. Like Dave thinks they're
Yeah.
precious. Everyone has their opinion, but it feels like that sentiment exists more and more. And I wonder where that comes from and the like stigmatization of family and childhood and motherhood. And yeah, how that's developed and impacting you, impacting me, even impacting Dave, like just impacting people emotionally who think this is, yeah, the right way for them to live their life. And then facing social stigma or judgment from friends is it's disheartening and it's also like an interesting social phenomenon. I'm curious if either of you have thoughts on where that might have come from.
I
I
just
can
want to.
definitely respond, but yeah, Dave, do
Well,
you want
I
to
just,
step
I
in? Yeah.
just, yeah, I'll just say the quick thing. I have a few other things we will come back to later, but I'll just say we've been on 3 tours, 2 across the United States, 1 across Europe. Your your place was the one time that we were with a family that actually, like has children, and it was the most rejuvenating, energizing stop on any of our tours. It was a genuinely beautiful slice of life, and it's not just the two of us because we're in that headspace and that's the direction we're headed. Nance and Will felt the same way. It was like it was a very, like, I think, grounding experience. And so I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is that it's like it's society's almost it's like the sort of liberal approach, the liberating approach. It was like, hey, women used to be traded like baseball cards or chattel or whatever, as way too young, this whole thing. And it's like, yeah, then they didn't get a choice and all of this. That's that idea of tradition versus what we're currently in, which feels like such a reaction, which is, it's like people are like, the extreme opposite is like very unserious dating. In fact, like a kind of dating that puts up really big walls against actually falling in love. I don't know. Or against the idea of having children. And so I don't know. I just wanted to say, like, it's really grounding to be around a multi-generational project like a family, but also you're not just a family to us, you're also, and this is one of the more interesting things for us because we're interested in, we care about time energy, we care about literacy, we care about
Yeah.
people being able to make music and tell stories, and you're actually doing all of those things, and that's I think one of the most inspiring parts of the whole puzzle.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for those kind words. And yeah, I think that I mean, again, we felt just as reinvigorated and like rejuvenated by being with you all. And it was, yeah, I think it kind of sometimes reminds you of like why you're doing what you're doing is to have those like times when you get to commune with people like yourselves, like where you're like, oh right, like we're not just like, well, we are weird, but like you're doing this thing that's kind of weird for a reason. Like it in the sense that there's um yeah, it's just kind of a reminder of like there's other people out there who like are also thinking about doing things in kind of very different ways, and um that's cool. And it's like it's there's a lot of exciting possibility with that, because I think a lot of the liminal spaces, as I call them, or Daniel will call them, like the liminal web, right, where there's like these cool people doing cool stuff. Um, yeah, it's to think about how that relates to actually having a family, and the fact that like, a lot of those things are mediated by a screen on Zoom or whatever. Um, but like if you can have the chance to do like be in person, it's quite, yeah, it's quite exciting, and it also like affords the kids to be able to be in it, like be part of it a bit more. Like, and I felt so grateful because I felt really relaxed to have like my kiddos just be accepted the way that they were by you all, like just to be able to, I didn't worry. Like I didn't feel worried or nervous that like, oh, they're being too loud, or oh, they're gonna run into the agora. Like, and I didn't worry about that because like you guys were just so kind and accepting of all of us and all that it means. And the sort of sometimes the chaos that can be like a family with younger children. It's just there's just a lot of sound, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of movement and improvisation.
A lot of children climbing on you and invading
Yes.
your personal space, which we
Yeah.
experience every day. We got a little fraction of that, but it's like this is just what they do, and it's wholesome, and you can
Yes.
set boundaries sometimes, but sometimes it's fun to be a human jungle gym for them, you know?
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, so I think like to me, I've been meaning to like articulate that to you guys, but like just thank you for accepting them and us like as it comes, where it's, and again like in doing that, in having that acceptance, again I felt very at ease and like relaxed to be able to just have them be doing what they're doing and kind of pop in to see what we're up to and like ask questions about this, or like you're saying, wrestle, or make cookies with you, Anne. And like I just think there's something like really, I appreciated that so much because sometimes again, it's just the nature of the medium. I get it. Like it's hard to know how to navigate that, but like, is it appropriate? Like, can you have your, with the liminal spaces? Because again, they're on a Zoom thing. It's like, okay, is this me stepping away from my family and being here, or is it like, am I able to? And I think there's this place for both. Like there are times for both things, right? Because you do sometimes just need to be able to concentrate and have a conversation, but there's also times when it's nice to know you can also do the element of like life and cooking and holding a baby and doing this and that and having conversations. It's like this very organic flow. I don't see them as separate, and I know it sometimes demands a bit more because you have to kind of cultivate the ability to hold the thread and like get back to it and go back to it even when some baby's coming, or kiddos coming. Can you help me with this Lego? I can't take this Play-Doh lid off, da 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 da. But then you go back to the point you were talking about, and I know that might be a lot for some people, and I get it. I'm not saying like everybody needs to do that, but I do think like what's cool about it is it does demand that you push yourself and cultivate skills of attention in different ways, and multifaceted attention. And I think that's actually, we should rise to the occasion of life. Like I think that it does make you rise to the occasion. And um I don't know. I'm not saying that people who have foreclosed that are like, I'm not making like, it's not a judgment on that. I'm just saying to, when you do foreclose yourself from potential opportunities to rise to the occasion, you may end up wondering, why did you do that? You know, you think you're trying to like make it kind of, you're going for it being easy and simple and planned and decided. And yet, is that really what you want? Is that really what you want? I think the beauty of not foreclosing those things and keeping it open is that you're actually saying, I'm not sure exactly what I want, but I know that I can want the possibility. And then you can be in that space. And I think, yeah, I think that's to me, that's what it means to like be married and be open to children is like that possibility space. And, you know, I think yeah, there's like it's the reality of it is that um it's kind of like you got to choose your hard. What type of hard do you want? Like, and so I think it's okay. It will be hard and challenging, but it'll also be really, rewarding and enriching. But what type of hard do you want ultimately? And I think the hard that the world presents in terms of like mainstream understandings of commitment and like loving another person, being faithful, letting that yield new human beings through, have childbearing and having families, like there's that, and then there's but the side today, I feel it as though it's, like you're saying, it's this huge massive reactionary pendulum swing in the other direction, to the point where it's like it's just so it's like all this fragmentation and insanity, and I don't know, like to me I'm just like that sounds like mental illness eventually. Like I feel like it's just going to lead to complete mental instability, physical instability, and like, so is that really the hard you want? You know what I'm saying? So just like what hard you want to choose, because they will have different like they will have different manifestations of what that actually means. And so um yeah, I guess it's just like it's the illusion of it being simple, easy, planned. Not easy always, because somebody might foreclose that so that they can pursue a really intense career. And again, if that's what somebody chooses, like go for it. It's just that there shouldn't be this like automatic, like to me, I think there's the openness is important, because what we forget is that people doing those things is what often is trying to cultivate like families who then maybe are trying to shape culture, or trying to have certain things that are there for communities. So it's like it's all of that kind of small overlooked kind of work that happens that I think does make a big difference in society at large. Whereas like that fragmentation, I'm like, I'm not sure what this is adding to culture, except some like really kind of sad, memes and reels about like just kind of like laughing, but it's actually really painful, and it's really like it's laughing about it because otherwise you just like kind of cry and realize like how sad it is, you know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm like I don't know what culture that's making, except like a lot of confusion. It's just like because I empathize for people trying to date these days. Like I really do, like, because it's hard, and it's again when there's not really a rubric of what it means to kind of to love, and to like to know that love is also so tied with a choice, and it's to me it's so tied with commitment and like staying faithful. Like I don't know, I'm not sure what it just I feel like it's just really unfortunately leading to a lot of like psychological instability for people. So yeah, it's like I didn't, I don't know, I knew for me it was like I don't want to um give so much of like my heart and soul and you know body to somebody who like I can't be sure is going to stick around, so it's like for me like seeking out somebody who really believed in the things I'm talking about, like faithfulness and commitment and like longevity and children, like that was important. And
Mhm.
and it kind of directed like my dating life. So
Mm.
um yeah, anyways, those are some thoughts that came to mind.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot. So I
No,
just
that was
like
awesome.
I'll just
thanks,
say
and I'm like,
on
I wasn't
the
start talking for.
on the faithfulness or loyalty kind of thread, and also on the sort of not really committing either to another person or to bringing life into this world and caring for it.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of coming to terms with the fact that I spent a good deal of time not really committing. Like what I was doing was I was dating, and then things would get more serious for me or for the other person, and then we usually try to get more serious, but then because we weren't thinking longer term and we weren't already kind of trying to live deliberately in this way where it's like, no, we're going to do this. It was usually too little, too late, and it brought these big complications repeatedly. And so I was pretty unhappy. I was never really struggling to find anyone to date. There was plenty of people to date, but the issue was seriousness, right? Like there's a level of seriousness that I was afraid. I was afraid to commit because I felt like I felt I think I think I bought into some kind of idea like that would be too much or too fast or whatever. And also I think there's like the risk, and also the risk of social disapproval. And I think that's one of the bigger issues here is because you're both kind of liberal in the sense that you're both like, live and let live and do what works for you. But then what we're also talking about is about a broader cultural or antisocial kind of imperative that says, yes, live and let live, but also, why would you do that? Why would you choose this? You're choosing poverty and it's ignorant. Like there is that weird kind of idea, but it's like not necessarily, it's not necessarily true. Yeah, I just feel kind of bad for having bought into it, I guess,
Yeah. A word that came to my mind, like while Michelle, you were speaking, and even a little bit like Dave, what you were saying, is the idea of resilience in human beings as being resilient. And I think there's even kind of a very like second wavy, third wavy, like feminist perspective that's also like women as resilient. Um, Committing to a relationship, I think for a lot of people is scary because of, the like fear of stigma and judgment, the fear of if I jump in too fast and too hard, there's potential heartbreak. Um, if, this cultural idea that, oh, if you're a mother too early and you never got to do your career, you're gonna lose your whole identity and just be a mom and be slave to these other people. If you start a family, you'll never have time for yourself. That's like everything you were saying is like, no, you learn how to adapt and to hold a thread even when a million different things are coming at you, and you just like you learn to adapt, you learn to be resilient and to pick yourself back up, to struggle through and come out the other side successful and better. And I think it's an issue that we see maybe just culturally across the board. I know it's something that in the past when Dave and I had a conversation with Dr. Lori Johnson, and she is also a college professor, and I think she even said like, man, these college students, I don't remember what word she used, but they're fragile. They don't have very much. I don't want to say they don't have resilience, but they haven't had the opportunity to practice resilience. I think because of our like, oh no, we have to talk about everyone's mental health all the time and constantly check in, and everyone's very much like coddled and taken care of to the point where before we started this call, Dave was expressing, oh, I've got these students who like didn't show up to class and now are like, I want to pass. And it's like, giving them the opportunity to make up all their missed work and not showing up and doing what they need to do it's kind, it's helpful, you're not that invested, you're not being paid enough as an adjunct to like whatever. But also like some students maybe just need the F. Maybe need the lesson of the F to learn to go, okay, I can change. I can like without it being like, oh, it's gonna cause me a mental health crisis if I fail my class, if I XYZ thing. So I don't know if that is part of any of this, especially the idea that excuse me, that, yeah, like a woman will lose all of her autonomy and her personhood, and her life is just completely over if she
Right.
chooses to have babies, and not like,
Mhm.
no, women are so strong and resilient and can literally birth a human out of their bodies that they've grown for 9 months, and then like rock it and do
Yeah.
like raise a baby and take care of the baby, and also do what they love and pursue art and music and like whatever. And there
Mhm.
was just recently this pop star, Chapel Roan, like, I don't know if you've heard of her at all, but she was just on one of the big podcasts in the podcast world called Call Her Daddy. And there's a viral clip of her going around saying, all of like everyone that I know who has kids looks like they're in hell. I don't know a single person who has kids and is happy. They all just are tired all the time, and the life is just sucked out of their eyes. They're all just miserable. And I'm like, whoa, that's quite the narrative to be. Now, she, again, like people are defending her by saying, well, she's just talking about her own experience. But it is kind of that way of talking about it that's just like, oh,
Mhm.
once you have kids, you're done. It's too hard. And it's like,
Yeah.
what if
Yeah.
we took on the challenge to
Yeah.
be resilient, to learn how to hold our attention in different ways,
Yeah.
to take a struggle and adapt to it, or to get an F in our class and go, okay, I screwed up. I need to take charge of my education, to start showing up to make this right, rather than, oh my gosh, my teacher's so mean. Like, I had students one day last semester when I was teaching, I had 4 students fall asleep at the same time, and I'm like, like it was distracting me. And so
Mm.
I get up and I start like skipping around the class, going like, okay, everyone, it's not bedtime, it is class time, time to wake up. Like it was so awkward. And I went to the front and I'm like, I didn't know what to do. So I did that. And that was like, I was very meta about it. That same day, one of those students who was the one asleep goes onto the website Rate My Professor and called me aggressive and was like, she doesn't let us use technology in her class. It's like, rather than just owning up to the fact that, oh yeah, I was falling asleep in class, and she's like, oh, this professor's so mean to me. Like, come on now. So there's this whole crisis maybe of people
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
realizing their own potential for
Mm.
resilience in all these different aspects. And so when it comes to
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
and motherhood and parenthood in general, fatherhood, like having
Mm.
babies, if you let it be really, really hard and foreclose all the rest of your possibilities,
Mhm.
then maybe that's what it's going to be. But maybe we
Mhm.
can tap into some of that resilience and say, no, I can keep living my life. I just have
Mhm.
to adapt and do it a little
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was so good. I love what both of you said, and I'll just say like um to kind of say like don't feel so bad, Dave, because I there was a good 5 years where I had the same thought. Like I didn't go to very much extremes because sort of like my Christian values like kind of kept me in line for the most part. But like I was very much like I don't want, it was the beginning of college and I met Daniel and probably had a pretty good sense that like this is like a very important man. Like he's just somebody who I'm pretty sure like is somebody I will know forever and I really always seek him out to talk with him, and yet I was kind of like, I just got to college. I don't want to be committed. I just want to be like, free and I don't
Mm.
want to I don't want to close off my potential, so like I've had these exact, like, it's not as if I'm, it's, I'm immune to these things. Like I definitely had those seasons and, can struggle, anyone can struggle with certain thoughts about, you know, um, like am I doing enough or am I doing like am I making the most of my potential or the most of the what I've been given? Am I doing well with that? And I think so it's not like don't feel bad, like it's a very human thing to experience and do. And I think for the fact that but I will say that it was somewhat consequential that I felt that way because it made me make certain decisions that I think it made it harder when I sort of came to realize like, okay, maybe I shouldn't ignore the fact that I keep on, realizing that Daniel is this very important man and a special person. And I, eventually was like, oh, I think like maybe we're actually meant to be doing life together and be married, And so it was consequential actually because, for my family, they're kind of like, where is this coming from? Like, we didn't ever have the traditional dating thing because, it was just like we were friends. And then the next day, we had a conversation where we're both like, I think we're going to get married. And he's like, yeah, I think we are too. We're like, yeah, I know. And then that was it. And so it's just so different. And that was, I can understand like that was quite a shock for my family. And that led to a lot of difficulty in terms of like, you know, not just thinking like, why are you doing this and what are you doing? Because it also related to me, really diving into our work as OG Rose and the writing. And that meant me not pursuing a master's or me not, doing some teaching opportunities that I may have like started to look into and everyone's just like, what are you doing? Like it struck them as so crazy and just out of nowhere in some ways. And I feel like, there's a part of me that feels I feel bad that I didn't like communicate better around that or sort of say like earlier on, like, recognize that deep inner knowing or something that I had about Daniel and not just sort of date all these sort of guys and sort of like have all these, psychologically consuming things that I would allow, right? And that would occur. And I probably put on other people. And it's just like there are real like effects of that. Like that's why ideas matter. And the fact that we do have a kind of resilience averse and commitment averse kind of culture in for younger people, it's like that's consequential. Like it has these effects. And I, sort of spoke to it. Yeah, yes, it's a much bigger story, but I wanted to just sort of speak to that. So like, I've been there. I've been there in the whole, I don't want to be committed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then also like, and to your point about resilience, yeah, I think that's really a great identification. And yeah, because I mean, like honestly, it's scary. Like it's scary to go through the process of, giving your entire life to somebody else, allowing your body to be the vessel for other human beings, going through the birthing process. I mean, I had 4 natural labors um and I'm so grateful I was able to do that. Like I really genuinely thank God that everything went well for me and babies. And I yeah, I love the fact of being like anyways, I'm very grateful for that experience. I was talking with my twin sister last night though about like how hard labor is. Like it's just a very difficult physical process. And today we have so many technologies that just basically give you an out. And actually it's become ethical and it's become moralized to take that, to just it's the right thing to do, to whatever it is, whether it's use birth control or use the epidural, use, these certain technologies that give you an out. And what I'm saying is like, it gives you, I say the language of out, but for some people, they might just say it's just another choice. And it is another choice. That's why people can make the choices that they want to make with those technologies. But it's hard because those technologies do make you feel kind of silly when you endure the suffering and the scariness of what it means to not do those things. Like when you're open to those things, it's like, what do you mean by it's scary? It's just you're entangling yourself. A concept from Julie Resch came up in the Rosie Cross 2 at Philosophy Portal, which I thought was a really great idea. She was talking about um, basically like birthing a dead god. It was a very interesting concept. But the point of the matter is she was talking about this concept of entanglement. And I'm like, that's such a perfect way of understanding like motherhood and fatherhood and making a family because you're entangling yourself so much. And that's wonderful and amazing because guess what? Roots entangle into the ground. And that's why you have these gorgeous plants that can bear fruit and vegetables. But it's also like that entanglement is risky, right? Because it's our hearts and our minds and little beings and their hearts and their minds. And it's like, it's scary because what if, right? What if, what if XYZ PQ32? It's just like all of the possibilities of that unfortunately has hard things that happen. And you're like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I subjecting myself to like a continuation of, not just a continuation of life. I'm not trying to get like, like I don't want to blow up the world, I'm thankful the world is continuing. But to have children is a kind of radical affirming of a continuing of life itself. And life itself is a fullness of so many things. And but I think you have to, instead of going in my crazy kind of paranoid world of like all the what ifs, I always have to go back to like, what can I do? What can I do? And what can I let myself endure so that I can be so that I can have something to offer, that I can also become more of a human being, like that I can become a full human being, and also allow that to also be an offering and also a reward to enjoy myself. It's not just, it's an offering for others, and it's also something you enjoy yourself. And so, yeah, it's scary. But I think that again, the rising to that occasion to be courageous to say, I'm gonna, like I was quite scared during labor. It's like I'm scared. Like I don't know if I can do this. I'm scared. What if this, that, or that happens? And it's like, well, I could let the fear consume me and never let myself do anything, right? Or do anything like or bring any life into this world. Or I could just embrace that fear and say, I'm going to face it and I'm going to do my best, even though I'm shaking in my boots and I'm still voicing my fear. I'm still going to do it. And with labor, it's happening. Like there's no way to stop that train. That train left the station a long time ago. So it's like, it's going to happen. That baby's coming out. You're going to have to just do it. So yeah, I mean, the physical labor to me is like such a beautiful representation of resilience.
Mhm.
But you could also just get an epidural. And I'm not trying to judge that. I really don't. I know how hard it is. I understand why people get an epidural. I'm just saying we have these interesting technologies today that really allow us to be like, yeah, why would you do all that hard stuff? That's kind of silly. Like this, I had a nurse when on my third birth where she was kind of saying like, oh, like the people who don't get epidurals, like they're always just so like loud, and
Oh
I'm
my
just like,
God.
yeah, I was like, oh,
Uh,
okay. Did you think I was loud?
huh.
You
That's not
know?
something you want to hear, like when you're about to, yeah,
Yeah.
push a human out of you with no
Yeah.
medication.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, fortunately, there are so many super kind nurses who are like, wow, that's amazing. Like, just sweet, sweet nurses. But
for
you're a rock
sure.
star, being sweet about it, realizing like, wow, that person just did something really hard. But yeah, I do think there's this sort of, there is a way in which it really presents a tension, I think, for women. Like the tension of like, why am I gonna just do the hard thing? Am I just being like kind of like, people say like nobody loves a martyr or whatever it is. Seems like am I just sort of like groveling on my knees just to do something hard? But I do think there is something about like when you are able to push through those types of things, it does change you. And I do think it builds your resilience. And look, like you might build resilience and then decide, you know what, next time I'm going to have an episode. Like there's not, again, I'm not trying to judge it. I'm just interested because we now exist with these technologies. They are there. So, the fact that people can choose to do certain things that then make them never able to have children, or, it's a very low chance or something like that. That's a technology that we have to live in light of. We have to live in light of that. And so then you're having to make choices with those things in the background. And don't, if you have no resilience because that's not been cultivated in our in our way of how we even educate children and like, and then them becoming college kids, like no wonder people don't want to do anything that's going to require like to, sometimes grit your teeth to get through that.
Mm.
Anyways, so
I think part of what I'm hearing from you both is that on this resilience note, that risk and discomfort, even painful processes such as labor, these have been turned into a choice, and that makes it so that
yeah.
when it's like you've gone through this sort of thing that puts you in the same boat as 99% of all women who have ever existed, right? You're in,
Exactly.
but now they're like, well, that's a choice though, and it's like, well, that's weird. It's weird that like the thing that
Yeah.
was like the defining thing for women for all time, now they're like, well, that's a choice though. And I guess I want to ask you both what you think about test tube
Yeah.
babies and the future of bringing new life into existence. And I guess I kind of want to ask, because we're all going to be good relativists here and say, hey, do as you do, but also, what are, just from your standpoints, the drawbacks of the epidural or of the test tube baby? You could incubate that thing. You don't have to that thing. Like, what am I saying? Well, it feels like it is a
It
that
feels
thing. It feels like it's a McChicken. It's like, oh yeah, I'll just get my McChicken from the incubator. As opposed to like, carrying it. I don't know, but maybe I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
or I'm romanticizing it a little bit, perhaps. And I guess I want to get your takes on that.
Yeah, maybe I'd love to chime in first here, like briefly, just as someone who obviously I don't have kids yet, so I have not had like firsthand experience with that, but it's I think a topic that I care about so much from a lot of different perspectives. One, just knowing that this is something I want, and from the
Mhm.
perspective of kind of the female empowerment perspective.
Mhm.
Like I think it's more empowering for women to feel encouraged by all parts of society that
Yeah.
they can create life rather than sending six rich women to space for 11 minutes like just happened 2 days ago or whatever. Like
Um,
that feels like
yeah.
a society that says this process that yeah, humans have gone through for all of history. That's
Yeah.
why the three of us are here today, is because people
Mm.
recreate and then babies are birthed from a female body. Um, like I just am gonna get a little, I don't know, woo-woo kind of spiritual here, but
Mhm.
like I
Mhm.
think that is so beautiful and powerful and a real
Mhm.
testament to the strength and the importance of women in
Mhm.
our human history, in our story, like an individual woman to be able to say like I went through something so hard and now there's like a person
Mhm.
who could
Mhm.
change the world, who could have their own family, who could do a million other things to
Yeah.
be able to say that you did that and to have the encouragement to be able to do that. And yeah, be able to like tap into that resilience of the female body. And men have their own, I think, resilience, but this is something particular to like giving birth. Is going through something, one of the most probably painful experiences that a human being can have,
Yeah.
and come out the other end. So I can only imagine that it is such like even though it is painful, it's probably such a rewarding experience to
Yes.
be
Yeah.
so in touch with your body and in a world
Mhm.
where it's,
Mhm.
oh, VR
Yeah.
headset, be on your phone, never go outside and kind of bringing it to the topic
Mm.
of nature a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
whether or not it's right or wrong, like that's yeah, that is an interesting question that everyone has to tarry with right now, but
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
imagine that there is power to and something amazing about being in touch with all
Mhm.
the aspects
Mhm.
of your body. And I think it's something
Yes.
that even
Yes.
just like having a menstrual cycle once a month and
Mhm.
maybe you get
Mhm.
cramps and pain here and you feel extra hormonal or emotional, whatever it may be,
Mhm.
like be you're kind of forced to be aware of that. And in the question of what's right, I would maybe say that that's a good thing, that we should be aware of the vessel that our souls and minds are living inside. If you look
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
want to chime in here really quick, and then yeah, I'd love to hear from you, Michelle, on that one.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
since you gave that lecture on David Goggins last year, I thought I'd make the connection here. You kind of sound like you might be the future David Goggins of babies. And in that case, you can take the meme, who's going to carry the boats? And you can say, who's going to carry the babies? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's funny to even use, I mean, I talked about it like it being hard and stuff. It's funny because it's like pain, it's pain with a purpose. It's pain. It's funny because the word pain even it doesn't even feel like the right word for labor
Mhm.
because it's like, yeah, it's and look, like everyone has a different labor experience. Some people barely feel anything at all. Some people feel it a lot. Some people feel it in their back. Some people feel it, in their abdomen more. There's a lot of different sensations that different people can feel. And there's a lot of reasons for those things. But I think that, yeah, it's weird because again, it's funny to think about it being, but look, like life, there is beauty and pain are very connected and it's not easy to accept that always, but it is true. And that's where I was saying before, like what kind of pain, what kind of hard do you want? Because the pain with a purpose is like it again, it doesn't even feel like the right word exactly because it's not just pain, it's like this incredible experience. It's like this, just something you would do again because you're like it's a miracle. It's an incredible thing that you're like, wow, I have the capacity to do that. I have the capacity to endure such a thing so that you can meet your child and like see their face and hold them and be like, oh my gosh, like yes, this is it's like the most amazing feeling in the world. There's nothing like it. And so yeah, it's like it's and that's the weird thing. I think there's it's like this there I feel like there's a tension of like being able to talk about how there are things that are challenging or hard or there's discomfort with that without it becoming like people kind of hear that and think like, oh, just get it over with or just tap out or just get or kind of think like or just don't even do it, right? But it's like, no, that's why you do it. That's why you do it. Like that's the reason you do it because of the discomfort. You do it because it pushes you. And you do it because you and then you get the like the sweet crying of like the tears of joy because you're like, wow. Like that is the miracle. And like there's something quite miraculous in it. And so yeah, I don't know. I think like a lot of the discourse, like you're saying about, that woman who was like, all of the people I know who are parents, like they just say hated that. But the thing is, it's like you have to, when you're doing something that does require a lot of you, it's still like you I don't know. I feel like it's like in some ways that's where there can be a respect for just people making a complete choice, not being in the middle where it's like we're going to do it, but I'm going to complain about it all the time. It's like, okay, well, either do it or don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
don't, and it's just like because otherwise you're just like, what message are you sending, especially to your kids? Like that it's like they're not a nuisance. They are not a
Yeah.
bother. They
It's like
are.
the way that I think it's become normalized in culture to like talk poorly about your spouse. Like I was in
Mhm.
the line today at the thrift store, like in the cars,
Yeah.
donating some stuff, and the truck in front of us had a sticker on the back that was like "Dog and wife missing. Reward for the dog."
Oh
As in like
my
I don't need
God.
my wife back.
Oh, I
All my
want.
life I've heard people like high school teachers, men and women, just like, oh, the old ball and chain, or even the women teachers just complaining
Mm.
about their husbands. It's like, then get a divorce. Then why are you married if
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
talk poorly about your spouse in public? But anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, either like commit and make the most of
Yes.
it or just don't do it and be quiet.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, yeah, that's where, yeah, I just think that's important. Like, commit to what you want to do, and then like, find a way to not complain the whole time that you're doing it, whatever it is. And yeah, I don't know. I'm still like ruminating on like the epidural point and like to your question on like test tube babies and like artificial wombs and stuff like that, Dave. Like I do think that actually like AI is a big conversation these days, but I don't know, it kind of makes me think of like how maybe it all actually started in the background with like AI as an artificial insemination of animals and like livestock. It's just a much bigger
Mm.
topic, but I'm interested in that because I do wonder if that's kind of how slowly but surely it just kind of moves toward, humans. And again, some people will cheer and see it as a great victory to be unchained from the womb and be able to have a baby outside of their body and all of that. Um, I'm not sh I'm not sure it's who knows if it's actually possible or not, or what the ramifications for biology of the actual human physiology would be in that kind of circumstance. I don't know. Um, but I think that, yeah, I don't know. To me, it's kind of like, again, it's I fear that there's a risk of commoditization with that avenue of childbearing because it's like I just pick up you kind of do this disconnected like almost kind of consumerism move of having children. And I do think that's it's related. I mean, the market also really does put people in a position where I think they sort of have they have again, there's no judgment to this. I understand it. It's hard. Like people are like, well, we'll have two kids and that's it because we can't, then we'd have to get another car. We have a sedan and like we'd have to get a bigger car and we'd have, these are like real questions that people have to kind of face and consider and all of that. But yeah, I think that yeah, it's it's weird because I don't know. It just sort of it's weird because like to me, I think the true wealth is is family itself, right? Is that like I was talking that right space of potentiality and openness and more life. But it's almost like I get where we have these new ethical thoughts of like, well, if you're gonna have kids, you need to give them each their own room, or you need to give them this, that, and the other. And it's just like, okay, where did we get that idea from exactly? And like, why are we, maybe you trying to give everything you can to your, to your kids, like is not really giving them what they actually need, which is like you, and just your ability to teach them a mode of being, um, by your own living that out. But yeah, I don't know. To me, it's completely the concept of like artificial wombs and all of that is just, I'll be honest, it doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sit well with me, because I'm like the whole point, that part of the point of like, the whole connection of having a child is also to carry that child, to feel that the being in your body. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like that's such a special feeling too. Like when the baby kicks and you feel them in your body moving, and you're like, whoa, that's incredible. There's like another human inside of me. And yeah, the process of being able to like nurse a baby from your own body, like your body just creates the food for the baby that it exactly needs. It's so miraculously designed to be that way. And so it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I think skipping over, doing it, I don't know. Again, it doesn't like artificial wombs, test tube babies. I don't know. It's like, are we specimens, or are we like, are we humans? What are we then? It would really kind of get back to that question of like, what does it mean to be human? And can you skip over these things that, like you said, it for much of human history were a core part of our becoming? Can you take those things out and us still have the becoming of humanity? So yeah.
Right, and right. And how does that affect the parent-child relationship? How does that
Right.
affect the actual biology of the baby coming from a very sterile environment like that
Mhm.
versus like becoming a baby literally next to your mother's heartbeat,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
having the father outside being able to feel and speak and like they hear your
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
Yeah. Another point going back to just thinking about like, natural birth versus
Yeah.
epidural versus
Yeah.
hospital birth that I think is another like important factor that again maybe we got to talk about a little bit when we were all together in person, but that is
Yeah.
just the idea that sometimes in some maybe large hospital facilities, the way that labor and delivery is run is not always the best for the mother, for the baby, and that's partly because of like the profit incentive. I'm sure there's a lot of stress on doctors in those
Yeah.
environments. But for one, just the way that our healthcare system is so broken, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, you get the
Mhm.
epidural and this and that and the other thing, and then you're,
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands of dollars out for doing something that 100, 200 years ago didn't cost really anything to do. So
Yeah.
this
Oh
like
yeah.
medicalization of a
Mhm.
natural
Mhm.
process that costs a lot of money because
Mhm.
of insurance, then if you don't have insurance, um,
Yeah.
I think yeah, this is a topic that really like touches a nerve for
Mhm.
me
Mhm.
just because it's like this thing that women have done for all of history now all of a sudden is they kind of you lose an autonomy in a relation to it now. Oh, my water broke. I just go to the doctor and you're not
Mhm.
really in control of the situation. In
Mhm.
some instances, I think there's a lot
Yeah.
more like education and advocacy right now around um women like advocating for themselves, parents advocating for themselves in the hospital setting.
Yeah.
So like it's normal practice sometimes to, cut that cord as soon as possible or even
Mhm.
like help the placenta out. That can
Mhm.
cause major problems.
Mhm.
You need all those nutrients to go back to the baby before cutting the
Mhm.
cord,
Mhm.
instantly washing them off. It's like, no,
Mhm.
the stuff
Mhm.
that's around them is important, is necessary. They're
Mhm.
being exposed to a new environment. Sometimes the practice of birthing on your back, it's like you're working against gravity there. And I believe that position was, kind of proposed back in the day for the ease of the doctor, because then the doctor can
Mhm.
just, it's like
Mhm.
easiest for
Mhm.
them, but it's like, so there's
Mhm.
just these problems that do exist, not all the time, but
Mhm.
in general, in kind of the medical industrial complex when it comes to
Yeah.
labor and delivery that I think
Yeah.
like also parents need to take into consideration in
Yeah.
terms of the epidural and doing it natural versus not. It's just like,
Mhm.
well, is this system actually working in your best interest and the best interest of the mother's health and the baby's health? And are they giving you the time to do everything at your pace, or be as loud as you want, and not saying, oh wow, you're really loud, you're disturbing everyone else in the building. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, like a human's coming out of me. I don't know what that's not a pleasant feeling. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's just a more general, I think, interesting social, cultural, political phenomenon of where I think it used to be the kind of hippie, leftist, radical ethic to be very critical of the medical industrial complex and to not trust pharmaceutical companies and to not trust hospitals and to be against, you know, against needing to rely on a doctor for the sake of your health. And now, I think in some kind of, again, I don't want to say like all people, but I think some ideologies or ideological leanings will just like blindly trust the science. Oh, you're depressed? Nothing you can do about it except take antidepressants for your whole life. Oh, your
Yeah, yeah.
water broke? Better get you to the hospital and let someone else take care of it. With no really like second thought as to, well, is that the healthiest option? Is that work best for me? Is that gonna cost me an arm and a leg? I don't know that. I think that's another factor that I take really seriously. And modern medicine is amazing, and the fact that emergency C-sections can happen, but
Yes,
like from my
yes.
perspective, that should almost be all the interventions and the poking and prodding should almost be a plan B in case there is an emergency. And if that's
Yeah.
not necessary, why does someone who's having a perfectly healthy labor need all these extra things that could be more harmful than good?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I'm right with you, Anne, on all that you're saying. And yeah, I mean, the hospital costs are also really exorbitant. Like, I understand like that it's a great space to be if you really just want to be sure that if again, if you needed a C-section or if you needed certain interventions, they're there. There are also like middle grounds where you can, be at birthing centers where there's like they'll still have things for hemorrhaging or they'll have certain medications, but
Exactly. Yeah.
but they're not like they're still very like much more of a calm kind of self-led type of birthing environment and things like that. And I think like it is kind of wild though, because I mean, I like calling people and asking about their costs, and I like finding about like all of the details. Because the thing is, a lot of people don't ever look at like what an itemized bill is. What are they actually charging you? Like the insurance companies kind of, it's a weird, I understand it's a system, and I guess, it's working on some level, but it's also not in many other ways. And it puts some strange incentives on certain things that I'm like, that I just don't know, like you said, are always well thought out or well thought through, or informed, for people. And yeah, like I think a lot of people will be like, oh, well, we're gonna hit the deductible anyway, so just do whatever. Like we'll like it's funny how psychologically, if like you might be hitting a deductible, just to use old insurance language, you might be like, well, yeah, well, of course I'm gonna get the epidural, or I'm gonna get these things, this, and this, because it's already covered. Like, so you just go for it anyway. And I think that's a really interesting thing that psychologically, like we're not always examining with like systems and what they make us think or do. And I mean, yeah, but a hospital costs, like, I mean, it could be $10,000. Like, and last time I checked, it's like $10,000 just to like vaginally birth your baby, like a healthy, normal delivery. It's just like, wow, like, wow. I mean, I get it. Like, thank you for being there in case you need that help. But like, that's the cost? Like, but see, people don't see what those costs really are, because again, it's kind of clouded in whatever, either it's a government program, or it's an insurance program or something that kind of doesn't let people actually see, like, it's almost like buying, something like you get at a restaurant, and then afterwards they bring the bill and they're like, that will be $3,252. You're like, it was a burrito, like, and you didn't get to see
Yeah.
you didn't get to like see the menu, like you didn't get to see the prices, but nobody
Right.
like, it's weird
And
though,
it's
because
just what you're expected to do. It's just you're pregnant in the West, you just go to the hospital and have the baby that way. It's like that's the
Yeah.
It's a
mainstream option.
burrito.
it's a burrito.
Yeah.
And it's wild, because you're almost like, I get that there are costs for things, but like really like that it's kind of feels like, there'd be a cost that would be reasonable and you're like, okay, I can understand it would be that much, but why that much?
Right.
Why $10,000 for doing something like, and again, like again, it's not, it's more just like what's happening with our systems that is occurring, like what in the world is going on that would be occurring, because that feels like a very, very huge inflation of a cost for a service that is really important. It's kind of taboo to talk about it though, because like anything health related is like, well, you don't want to be critiquing it because like it's there and it's helpful and it does save lives, and it's like, yes, we're all grateful for that.
Yeah.
Like
Uh-huh. Yeah.
nobody's upset about that. We're just also wondering, why does it cost $10,000? And that's and that's again just for like a normal vaginal healthy delivery. And you're kind of like, wow. I mean, so if you don't have insurance or you don't have, you're like, what? Okay, all right, that's interesting, and
Mhm.
um, I don't know. I'm interested in cost and things like that, like why certain things would have certain prices and what the experiences are like for those things. And every time somebody else comes in, it's another charge. It's a different provider. Like so, that $10,000 is probably not the complete accurate because you get the hearing test for the baby, you get this and this and this and this, and there's like it. So again, it's just yeah. What's kind of going on there, And again, this is a very it's actually a very natural biological process for somebody to birth a baby. So when you have this sense of, this cost distribution and whatnot, it's sort of like, wow. Anyways, it's a little confusing. Like it's a little confusing, but it's sort of hard to, again, I feel like it does get difficult to get into the questions of it because people are like, oh, well, don't worry. Like the insurance system will just take care of it because people just hit a deductible. So nobody cares what the itemized bill is. Nobody cares that it actually costs that much. And oh, and by the way, that $10,000 is with a huge self-pay discount, a 67% self-pay discount. So that's after the 67% self-pay discount. Isn't that insane? So $10,000 is after a huge self-pay discount. I'm just telling you some numbers I found out, when I interrogate the hospital about their
Oh
cost.
my gosh.
But yeah, but like so yeah, I mean that's a huge thing. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. Like
Yeah,
what?
no,
Like what? Like how are these things like I get, and so again you can't question it though, because it's like, but we're making sure people are safe. And yeah, thank God that there are those resources if need be.
mhm.
But it's also like, that radical intuition of your own body and allowing it to do what is able to do. And like you said, for much of human history didn't like cost anything. It cost the devotion of the other women and getting hot water and being present and being like there to help her through that and to see
Mhm.
see her and the baby through that. So yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't know, some people might be like, well, look, isn't this the solution? We'll just have artificial wombs and we just won't have to deal with any of those questions. But I'm just like, no, like to me, I'm like, no, I don't know. I feel like that's just going to introduce a whole nother set of like,
Mhm.
issues and yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess I want to bring it back around to a couple of bring a few threads together here.
Mhm.
A couple comments. First of all, I wanted to say on living deliberately, I think that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about seizing life, committing to life, choosing it, right? And so I always think of Henry David Thoreau at the beginning of Walden saying that he went out there to live life deliberately. But when I think of Thoreau or of the other guy whose name rhymes with his name, Rousseau, right? Rousseau
Mhm.
and Thoreau, both of them are like these romantic types of radical individualists who were not, I don't think, childless. I don't think Thoreau was childless. I know Rousseau was not childless, but they write as though they are childless. Like
Mm.
they take up this sort of radical individualist position. And then for Rousseau, that meant that he was sending child after child after child to not orphanages. I think it was so
Mm.
like that, where often they would die. I mean, it was actually really
Mm.
gnarly. And there's this idea of
Mm.
being liberated as an individual, where it's like now you're free from nature's bonds, right? But also we're
Mm.
talking about being liberated from risk, from challenge, from commitment, from the entanglements with others. And I guess it has me thinking about like beauty. And you said something about how beauty and pain go together. And I was just wondering, like, is there such a thing as a beauty that avoids discomfort or risk, right? Because to me, when I think of like the most beautiful people in my life from over the last couple of decades of time spent with people across a lot of different scenes, across a lot of different states, across a lot of different countries, the people who are trying their hardest to live in this sort of comfort or discomfort-free zone, I don't know. It's like you're delaying the inevitable. You're delaying the inevitable, and what happens is your tolerance level goes down, right? And so it's like, I don't know. I've spent a lot of my life avoiding discomfort in various spheres, whereas in other spheres I take on challenges. And so I think we can avoid challenges in one area while taking on challenges in another area. But it's more on this question of nature. And as Nina Power said in the last episode, nature is not nice. It's not always nice, right? And so it's like, yeah, well, we're human beings. We're not necessarily wholly bound to nature. Like the way that nature is not the law. We, in some cases, should be countering certain things that are natural, right? Like, oh, naturally, this person will die without us helping. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't help, right? That doesn't mean let nature take its course. Well, sometimes we should help. But also, there's a sweet spot, and I guess we're trying to find what the sweet spot is. And so I want to bring that back as a sort of segue to your faith in Christianity, because you touched on it earlier. And that will be, I guess, maybe before we close out, if we could hit on that. I'll let Anne set up the question, because this is a big one for her, especially. And yeah, just thank you so much for all of this. Both of you are share. I mean, I feel like this is way out of my league in a sort of sense. Like I'm the
You're
guy
just a
here.
man. You're not allowed to have opinions on this. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just here to learn. Yeah, but no, for real, I appreciate this. So, yeah.
Um, yeah, so this is a question that I asked Nina when we had her on the other day, and I think it's a question that I'll ask Dr. Lori Johnson when we have her on next week. And it's a question that I've just been developing, or a set of questions over the last few years as I meet all of these wonderful people in our lives who are, you know, intellectuals or who care about the liberal arts and who do a lot of reading and are based in philosophy, but who also like are Christians or have a strong relationship with God. And kind of my own briefly background in that is like I was baptized when I was a baby. We went to church here and there, and there was a time when I like desperately wanted to have a relationship with God. I desperately wanted like some kind of sign that God is real. You know, I'd hear people tell these stories and I was like, gosh, I want to feel this. And I was in all these organizations and went to youth group and went to vacation Bible school every summer. Um, and so it's like I was kind of trying very hard to be a Christian or to have a relationship with God and Jesus. And then in middle school, so it was around that time, I just was like, I don't feel this thing that other people say they feel. And at that same time was the first time in school when we really started to learn about and were confronted with like na large scale tragedies and evil at the scale of the Holocaust. Like that was, really the first time in my schooling where we learned about something so horrible. And so when I learned about that, I had this just, I struggled and said, well, this God that I've learned about that, supposedly controls everything and loves everybody wouldn't allow such a terrible thing to happen. And so there's no way that God could be real because things like this wouldn't happen. And so since then I've just kind of like agnostic, but again, as I meet more people as we're about to move up to North Idaho with Dave's parents who are very religious and very strong in their faith. I just like I feel compelled to just hear people's stories.
Mm.
And hear about, what role Christianity or faith or religion, God plays in your life and
Mm.
how that balances out, or maybe doesn't balance out, but how, you have a life of faith while also loving the liberal arts and
Mm.
philosophy and just how, like, yeah, what role that plays for you and your
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anne. It's a great question. It's a big question. And yeah, it's been really great to talk with you and
Yeah.
Dave. I yeah, I mean, I think that for me, um, there's definitely the component of compelling that sometimes I would say I I kind of relate that to to a relationship with God in feeling compelled, and that
Mm.
maybe being the Holy Spirit. That's kind of the best way I can equate it in that sense. I was born and raised in a Christian home, and my dad is Dutch Reformed. My mom was Catholic, became Dutch Reformed to marry my dad. So have like that Protestant sort of background. Um, I definitely can say that um, it's interesting. I have an identical twin sister, and I do sometimes wonder, Anne, if like psychologically I've had a deep sense of like feeling something that feels so one or so like unifying and or so connected in this like harmonious way that for me, I kind of relate that to sort of the maybe what it means to like have a oneness with God who created the whole world or something like that. Like there's something about like how I feel like maybe I was given a type of insight into a type of close relationship. And I think most people have the ability to grow and develop into that, say with their spouse or with a dear friend. And that kind of that gift. And to me, it's sort of I don't know, it almost makes me wonder sometimes if in experiencing that and almost the telepathic connection that we have, if that also
Yeah.
furthers like a sense of um knowing what like something of a divine relationship is like, Um and I think, yeah, I mean, it's again, it's a really big question, but I appreciate you asking, and I think that it's something where um it really was philosophy and the philosophical journey that made me start to question things for sure. But I don't know that it's ever been in a way to completely reject, what was sort of always in my own experience and in my own heart, because for me it was like even though yeah, sure, in some ways, like we're all indoctrinated in some way or another. I kind of feel like we sort of just have to admit that, like whether it's our
Mhm.
societies or like the algorithm or our religion or whatever.
Right.
So I don't think there's an escape to that. I think you can get those self-skeptical and you can step back and realize that about yourself and about people in general. So that's helpful. Because then it gives you empathy for difference as well, for people who also have something else that they believe very strongly that they are completely in their heart sure is right and right, is the way, right? But yeah, I think for me, honestly, like there's something about the love of wisdom that is, like I said, that philosophical journey that has only like deepened a kind of strange, a strangeness, a kind of complexifying that relationship with God, and with Christ, but also to really amplify it as well, which sometimes also means to sort of not always look very like I'm not always look very Christian, like doing what some of all my other more Christian, not more Christian, but my other Christian friends or family might do or speak about per se. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think there is something where I I don't know. I think there's some, and I don't know if it's just my what I have to sort of what I feel is my choice to believe in that helps me to understand uh, the world and the human condition and whatnot. But it is something that I will go back to again and again and again because, again, there's something quite humbling about like we're talking about mothering, to become a parent is a whole new radical kind of look into the concept of God as Father, you know. So yeah, I think it's only deep in that way, but I definitely have had many kind of, I don't know, like I said, ways in which, you know, you have to kind of, I think, try to be fearless in stepping out into the difference, right? Into like allowing yourself to learn beyond what what you know is right, or what you know is the truth and all of that, because, you know, to me, like, truth is that spirit of that compelling, or at least that's kind of how I think about truth, which is such a huge word, and I don't think my what I just said there does it justice, because I think it's far more complicated than that. But I do think that yeah, there's something about having to anchor one, it kind of being anchored in something that is a truth or a reality even beyond your own existence. That's a bit much, it's part of a much more bigger macro picture, is how I sort of relate to like knowing God and knowing that there is a relationship there that I don't even, it's funny, I used to think about it much more in terms of like, I have a relationship with God, you know? I think about it more like there's just a deep abiding with God that is doing life. And again, I think that I've there's an interesting way in which coming back to that core of Christianity for me is like honing and pushing and challenging what I know to be the case, or like, I don't know, to me I think it should actually push you to really to embrace and explore into the weird and the strange, because that is the life that Christ lived. Like he was not accepted, and it's easy to say that too, and like the trope of like, well, we know Jesus wasn't accepted, he was rejected, he was killed for what he believed, but like, or not what he believed, he was killed for for who he was, for what he did, you know. But that's radical. That's a very radical thing. And so, you know, thinking about it more in terms of doing and less about just believing, because I'm not saying that belief has no role, but it's just that like, what do you actually do with that? What are you doing? How are you being? Um, so yeah, again, it's a huge question, but I do think that it's, there's kind of a that spirit, that compelling, that check in my spirit, like of, you know, like when I'm if I've been, there was a time I was really, really dealing with anxiety. There are many different instances of this, but there's kind of like this almost like that shake by the shoulders, like you need to stop this and let this go. You know, it's like, what is this that's kind of speaking to me? Is that just my own voice in my head? Is that God? You know, and I think it's, again, very, very healthy to stay very self-skeptical with you know, being so sure of yourself. But I do think that, you know, the relationship that I have, you know, again, it's a funny word to say relationship, or the abiding that I would say is present in my life with God, and, you know, the spiritual aspect of life really, to me, does relate to like the philosophical journey, honestly, because I think the love of wisdom is a big part of actually knowing the love of God and the love he has for his creation. And again, there's a lot of hard questions to grapple with, for sure. But you know, it's almost like, well, to me, I feel like it does get to points. It's like, well, either we just like blow up the world because it's just a disaster, or we say, what can I do? Like, is there something small I can do? And being like just trying to kind of focus on that. And again, like that a sense of, I don't know, there's a lot of kind of metaphoric and narrative elements of the Gospels in particular that sort of like always kind of bring me back to like maybe something small that I can do or can be in the world that yeah, is going to at least fight, you know, keep fighting to be human, you know. So yeah, I hope that answers your question a little bit. Like that's pretty quick, you know, great question, a
Yeah, it's
big
such a big
question.
question, like,
Yeah.
to throw on you. Hey, talk,
No,
but
no,
yeah,
yeah, I hope that kind of helped a little bit.
yeah, I just am curious. I'm in like a very curious stage and have been for a few years, and just like I think that religion, like mainstream religion, can and does get a bad reputation when it's weaponized to say, well, this should be this way, or that, you know, like how it gets kind of weaponized in politics, or when people are
Mhm.
overly evangelical, and like we make fun of, what's his name, Sean the Baptist, like this guy who just goes around to college campuses and just like yells at women for being sluts and God would hate. Like, it's just not a good representation of religion, God, Christianity. And so it's
Mhm.
like, well, I've got all these thoughtful people in my life, so I want to hear from them, not the guy who's forcing himself onto the college campus being like, you're all sinners and you're all going to hell unless you like I don't care what you have to say. I want to hear from like good-hearted people
Mm.
who think deeply about these questions. So, thank
Mm.
you so much for sharing on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to reflect more on that question and I'd love to talk with you
I would love
more
that,
about
yeah.
it. Yeah. It feels like a hard question to know like from what angle to take that or to have to
Right,
exactly
yeah.
answer it. But
Especially in like a public context versus like if
yeah.
you and I were just talking, yeah.
Yeah, but I do think that I like I said I hope that that kind of speaks to it. But I
Mhm.
think yeah, I just I do believe in that there is beauty, truth, and goodness. I'm a sucker for those things. No, I'm just kidding. But like I do think
Yeah.
those exist, and I and I do think like I'm honored to experience them and witness them those incredible things through people, through people like yourselves. And it's like I do think there's something about that that is yeah, it's something of the divine, and I I hold on to that because I do think it's important to tarry with it, even though it's hard and they're really difficult questions that it brings up, so yeah.
I want to come back to this thread as well. So, not just this thread, but also the thread of individualism and this sort of consumer approach and this sort of attempt at a friction-free life and the sort of
Mhm.
trickle downstream effects of that that sort of aggregate socially and the kinds of culture that comes from that. I'm really interested in tying all of that to the relations of production and the mode of production and the horizon of possibilities and the fields that we're navigating and the habitats that we form and all of these things that I'm really into and thinking about and also bringing it back to nature and natality and nurture and I'll just say I look forward to coming back to all of that. But the one thing about natality is that in that book, and maybe you could pull up the author's name. It's escaping me at the moment. I think Jennifer something. But in that book, I think that one of the things missing from natality, as you take the concept of bringing the new into existence and everything, and this is based off of a very foggy recollection, is that the
Jennifer Banks, by the way.
nice. Okay. Yeah, Jennifer Banks. Is that what's something missing? I think is kind of the courage to risk entanglement and going
Mhm.
beyond the the safe cocoon of your consumer bubble and its sort of
Yeah, the
slice of
individualist isolation consumer mentality that we're all encouraged socially, politically to take on.
right. And
Mhm.
so I the
Independent as well.
the quote that I wanted to share though from yeah, now I think I might have shared this with one of you when I originally saw it, but when I went through our DMs, Michelle, I didn't see it there, and then I looked at my DMs with Anne, I didn't see it there, and I was like, maybe I didn't, maybe I never shared it with either of you. But let's basically close out, but kind of on this note, and maybe it can be something we can come back to as well. But Joe, which is like I don't know, that's like a Twitter handle or something. Like their name is Joe. It's at Junker Joe. Situation I see in Brooklyn a lot. Couple waited until late 30s to have a kid for career stability reasons. Late 30s come and the career isn't quite there yet, but you go for it anyway because now the clock is ticking. Realize you want siblings and feeling the fertility pressure, so space the kids super close. Now you're 40 and exhausted with two under two. Both parents working full time, so kids are getting screwed over by nannies and daycare, and that doesn't even cover the full workload, so the careers suffer anyway. One crisis, aging, parent, cancer diagnosis, recession, away from being forced out of the workforce until you're too old to hire back in. And I'm just thinking about how it's, I'm surrounded by it. I'm surrounded by people who are entering their 40s now. And the people in their 30s who have children already from their 20s aren't living, in all cases, the most ideal lives, right? Like, this is not always the case. In some cases, it's pretty difficult. But they do seem to have a kind of fulfillment. And so I want to separate consumer satisfaction from some kind of deeper fulfillment, because I think that there is something there going on. And I see that because I also have friends who either had accident babies, they didn't do it deliberately, they weren't committed, they were living in this sort of passive phase, and it kind of bumped them out of that, but it's not something they chose. So the accident babies, or they're childless, and they're now living with these repercussions. And, I've had a couple of people in the last 6 months open up to me about it and say, it feels like they're looking down the barrel of a loaded gun, except that it's life in their 40s alone, when everybody else they know has kind of moved on and either has families or is essentially dying from some kind of addiction. And here they are alone, moving into this and just going, what was my life about? What's my life going to be about? And I don't think that we should be making decisions on the basis of fear. I don't think that's the point at all. The point for why I bring this all up is because it's why I care about it, right? It's why I care about it, because I feel like almost everybody at Theory Underground has some kind of a critique of modernity or liberalism or capitalism or something like that. But what we tend to miss is this sort of intergenerationality and how after a certain point, it's hard to be an individual anymore, right? So that's my closing thought.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, Dave. And I second that. I mean, it's a real thing. It's a real thing that people are experiencing. Speaking of babies,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we're like closing out. I hope this doesn't like
No, this is good. It's
disrupt
good.
or anything.
It's good timing.
go for it.
Yeah.
Hi,
Perfect
buddy.
timing.
Hi, buddy. Yeah, hi, buddy.
Oh!
He's fun.
Oh, look at who we have here.
Speaking
Hello.
of dependent babies.
He's so cute. I can't
Hi,
get
Paul.
over him. Thank you for. Yeah.
Hi, Paul.
He's a cutie.
Hi. I've held this baby. Hi. Boo. Boo.
Peekaboo.
Peekaboo.
It's like it's top.
Why are these people on the screen? What's going on?
Does he remember
Yeah.
me? I wonder. Yeah.
I wonder. Does he remember? Oh, they're so cute. They're so sniffy and squishy and adorable. But yeah, it's a real thing that a lot of people are facing. I don't know. I wonder if we see it in higher proportions being in like the theory spaces. I don't know. Do you think that's, I mean, I think there is a demographic there that's pretty large. And it's like, wow, it's kind of like, I don't know, in some ways, I mean, maybe the hope is that like getting back into theory is like a way to revive one's hope. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of dudes. So if like you're looking for like, I mean, it depends on what, spouse you're kind of like looking for, like a partner you're looking for, you might be able to find some really great friends or maybe a life partner. But I'm just saying like, it's hard because like what practically does that space afford people in terms of, maybe not being alone for the rest of your life, yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough.
Right. And it's tough, especially because, again, like, you don't want to sound like you're passing judgment on someone who's choosing not to have kids. But it is really interesting to me, I think, the proportion of people that I know. It's like, yeah, we all know a lot of people. I know a lot of people of different age ranges. Not very many of them even have kids on their like horizon at all. It's just
Yeah.
And then there are people who, when we think of natality, yes, natality as like the creation of life, but also like natality and creating some project or creating something new, even if even if it's not having children, like people can and do obviously live amazing, fulfilling lives where they're connected with their community, where they're making a positive change, where they're never alone. But I think the tendencies that I see within a lot of these people who just, I don't like kids, I don't want kids. And I think part of it is like by economic necessity that they are so robbed of time energy that they're exhausted and then they get home and yes, all they want to do is play video games and eat garbage pizza from the place down the street and like that's what their life is and it's
Yeah.
comfortable and it's easy and a lot of people say, for political and environmental reasons, I don't want to bring a child into this world. So it's like, I totally understand where they're coming from. And especially when you're 20s, 30s, even 40s and have, a dual income or an income that's just for you and you're able-bodied and can travel and spend your money on all these things that you want. It's like, yeah, that sounds great. I would love to go on European vacations and go to Disneyland 10 times a year. Like that sounds like a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, when we think about the future, not only like who's gonna take care of me, who's gonna be there for me when I start to lose my abilities, but like who's gonna be there for me when I'm not a productive worker, when I'm burnt out on consuming. And if you don't have kids and you've also not been, you know, cultivating an intergenerational community and have kids and older people in your life at all stages of life. Like I think there's something so important about that and the like acceptance of the idea that human beings are dependent. Like we value so much independence and individualism and I maybe that's not true. Most like yeah, we can be independent, we can have a strong sense of who we are as an individual, but you come out of the womb being dependent as a human. Like that is something about us. Most other mammals and species, it's like the baby comes out and they can already walk. Like human babies need, like they're literally dependent on you for such a long time. And so maybe like that is what makes us human is that we need other people, that we have the capacity to love other people so deeply and to influence other people so deeply. Um, and
Yeah.
I just think something that gets lost when we all go through a schooling system that segregates us by age and says that, oh, you just need to be an independent girl boss, careerist, and you're a consumer and you should be allowed to and entitled to consume whatever you want. And I just can't see how that lifestyle will be fulfilling for most people forever. And so
Yeah.
however they get connected to intergenerationality, well, that's up to an individual person or couple. But I don't see a whole lot of emphasis on interconnectivity and intergenerationality right now.
Yeah. And there's also like I was just thinking about like how, there's the people who like just decide they don't want to have kids. But then there's also people who are in their 40s and are like, I wish I could just have a wife and kids. And like it's hard because what it makes me wonder is if you kind of feel like you've been lied to by like, I don't know, the system maybe or something where you thought you were doing like what you should be doing, what was maximizing like the right way to be or the right or the right way to enjoy or something. I don't know. And then suddenly you're like, oh wow, it feels like it's like it almost is like a little too late, too little too late to realize suddenly you're like, wait, this didn't end up giving me the results I really wanted. And I actually would like to, have a wife and family or a husband and family, like in a family. And it's not that I don't think it's entirely too late. Like, I mean, biologically speaking, for females, there can be a window. I think sometimes so even that, anyways, I challenge a lot of things that people say. But anyways, yeah, but yeah, I do think that yeah, it's funny because I mean, obviously, like I get it, like I guess it's not going to be on the career chart, but I always thought that was interesting in my high school. You got like the career chart at the school counselor, and you got like all the cool things, and then, but mother's not up there, father's not up there, And I get it, like you don't, yeah, it's true. You don't get paid to be a mother or father, but you get like the priceless, the priceless, right? Like that's the funny thing about that word, right? There's no like there is no like way you could monetize the value of what that is. But I will say really quick, just to like connect it to your question to me directly about like religion and my own, my own kind of walk and journey in Christianity. I mean, it's kind of a very yeah, I mean, people could not like it because it's like, oh, you were so like, you felt so bound up by like some, regulation or something like that. But the fact that, like I told you earlier, the fact that I did have, Christian values related to like sexuality did make me not do certain things that then I didn't use a lot of years up to just like, you know what I mean? Like kind of, oh, I just want to kind of hook up with a bunch of people and then now I'm 35 or 40 and I'm realizing like, wait, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just I mean, it's maybe it feels like, oh, like, could there be a force function that's not, religion or Christianity in the West? I mean, like,
Right, yeah.
Is there something that could just make one value that without it being like, the father figure saying like, no, that's not good for you, don't do that,
Right.
or you're not allowed to do that or whatever. So I don't know, like maybe I just, for my particular who I am. Like I just that's the way I've operated with that, where a lot of people might be able to realize it themselves, but a lot of people don't realize it for themselves. I'm not saying they like necessarily need Christianity per se, but what I'm saying is they might need that like you said, the teacher to say you get an F or hey, like there are consequences for like what you're doing, So I mean, just on like a very practical level, like
Yeah.
I don't mean to seem like utilitarian with that question of Christianity, but I'm just saying it did have some real effects for me where I was getting married, you know, because I wasn't going to have sex until I got married. There, it's as blatant as that is. So it's like it does make you realize like, oh, okay, if I wanted to have that, then I'm going to need to commit to somebody because that's, that's kind of like what Christianity is saying like is the best way to live. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a very kind of practical point, but like in a way, it's kind of like, oh, that's so restricting and so repressive. I know it's in some ways, some people have had a really like some traumatic things with that, and with repression of sexuality that is not right. And I'm not saying that's okay. I'm just saying that the place for that may be like it. It may kind of maybe at a younger age put things into perspective in terms of like what is your ultimate fulfillment? Is it going to be in the hookup culture or is it going to be in God? And so therefore you're not looking at it in a bunch of sexual partners. You know what I'm saying? Just to put it on a very practical level. Hi there, is that Thomas?
This is Thomas, and
Hi,
he was like,
Thomas.
I'm gonna walk on the counter, and I said no, and then he jumped off, and I caught him midair.
You're the father figure saying no, don't walk on that keyboard.
Exactly. Here we go. This is a real life example of me putting limits on something that is not good for him in the long term. Because one day he could walk. I'm just scared of them, like one day walking on the counter on the stovetop after it's just been on and burning
their
baby paws.
paws.
You stinker.
He's a handsome cat. Really,
He's a
really.
handsome boy.
Yeah. Thank you, boy. So is Ryan.
Awesome.
Of course.
Thank you. Of course. Well,
That's
this
right.
was awesome.
You met
I think
Ryan,
this was just a
yeah.
great like start of the many future conversations that we will get to have with you both on this podcast and also just like in our own friendship that is developing and emerging and that we're so grateful for. We're like, we think, Dave and I really do think that your family is awesome. You and Dan are just so like you're cool. Like you're really cool people. Like, your kids are so full of energy and personality that is like, oh wow, this is a way that we want to live our life, and it's just one, I think, excellent model of like living out humanness to its fullest capacity. And so we're so grateful you could join us. We're so grateful we got to spend some quality time with you. Paul is so precious. Your kids are so precious. Your family's so precious, and awesome conversation. So thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, you're too kind. I'm like all the feels. Thank you so much for your kind words, Anne. And yeah, we love you guys so much. You guys are super cool. I was like, I just want to call you over for dinner. Come on over. We'll have a like I was telling you about the little
25 hours.
Yeah, right. Just come on over, guys. Yeah,
this is why we need high-speed railways in the U.S. That's another conversation for one day on what's right, I'm sure, so we can
infrastructure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. No, it was such a joy. Like I love this conversation so much, and I appreciate you guys just, just being open to hearing whatever I have to share here. And yeah, great
Awesome.
questions. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Super cool. I'm so glad we're friends.
Yes, us too.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever you want to
Okay, guys.
share, whenever you want to share it, you're always welcome. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, love you guys. See you
Love
later.
it. Have a
too.
good night. All
Yeah,
right.
you too.
Subscribers get access to all past courses at Theory Underground, from Chris Catrone to Michael Downs, as well as ongoing courses taught by David McKerracher, Benjamin Studebaker, and Nina Power. Subscribers also get access to monthly research seminars, and the higher tiers of involvement unlock discussions and one-on-one small group tutelage. A one-off course here or there is one thing, but Theory Underground is a school of thought, and it has research in motion. It is a process of development, generating the only, or at least some of the most revolutionary, transformative, or radical ideas coming out of the theory scene. If you are interested in the critique of the old and new left, but also a critique of postmodernism and metamodernism, and you want to go beyond all of that to something that is conserving and fighting in defense of the human, well, Theory Underground is where it's happening. Between authors like Marx, Heidegger, Levinas, as well as American authors like Postman and Illich and Lasch, Barry, or underrated thinkers like Hannah Arendt. What we do is draw off of the history of philosophy, of political theory, of philosophy of nature, all the way up to the current contemporary debates or fundamental divisions within the theory scene between the Ljubljana School and the CCRU, Žižek and Land, and we say, no, we are here to stand up for the human, to defend meaning in the face of impossible odds. This is the anti-nihilist side of the theory scene. This is the pro-natalist side of the theory scene. This is the neither left nor right side of the theory scene. And it's all being organized by me, David McKerracher. I built this because there's nowhere else on the internet to get what I need, and there's other people who magically get something out of that as well, and they are making this possible right now by subscribing. So if you're like me and you're never a huge bookish kind of person, but somewhere along the way you got really into listening to educational materials, if you got really into listening to podcasts and then books at work, if you love going deep into ideas, but you're just not a traditional bookish kind of person, well, this is where the alliance between people like us and people who are more bookish and specialized are able to meet, to work through these things, and do so in defense of the human, in defense of our dignity, in defense of our common humanity and our intellectual integrity. This is not a place where we're going to kick you out because you're pro-life or pro-choice, or where you are an atheist or a agnostic or a Christian. But it is a place where you're expected to love one another regardless of such things, and to show up for people in your actual IRL real life communities regardless of such things. Not to become a little online hater who just uses theory to manipulate other people and confirm your biases. No, Theory Underground is something else. And if that is exciting for you, and if you're excited to learn about what this approach, this method, this school of thought has to offer, then I'm excited to meet you. Subscribe today. Thank you.